2 days left to the wedding, she was disappeared. The invitation cards had been sent out, the music orchestra was ready, cafe had prepared seats to the number of guests, the chef had finalized the menu. But Annie wasn't there. She was missing. The river was calm, the waves were hidden. A boat would come now and then, scaring the water and then just drive away. Olga was found in such circumstance, suddenly as if an angel in a blasé opaque evening, next to a hermit-like river. Before those vainly gloomy eyes of mine, Olga didn't have wings. She wasn't an angel. She didn't have anything different from others. Blonde hair, blue eyes, and extremely white skin, an average height, checkered shirt, denim pants, knee-high boots. Maybe I had already seen her, whether herself or her kids. When she sat next to me, she had another scent. The scent that I hadn't smelled before, the scent that wasn't Dutch. "I'm out of bounds," she said. "I hate lines, doormat of houses and cafes too. I despise welcome, such as stores, showcases, pointless windows." The angels were in her tongue, her soft and rosy tongue. "People are infatuated with factories and packaging, but I'm not a cow's milk whose percentage of fat is shown in tables. I'm not a pack of chocolate whose calorie content is obvious. See my lips. Where does it become clear that I can actually suck? How can one say that I have milk in my breast? Yes, I do have a beehive between my legs, but who knows that its honey is sweet and not mildewed? I don't have a price, I don't have a label." Her strange talk took me in and embraced me. Or perhaps I had embraced her like a fragile china, fragile and exquisite. I was licking her every single word. I would taste them. A sweet herbal taste had filled with my mouth. I wanted to get more. I wanted to learn the taste of her tongue, so that maybe I forget the bitterness of Annie's vanishing into thin air. Maybe the image of Annie once again grows from the tongue of Olga. The air was muggy, as if we were lying inside a pot with a huge padded lid hanging over our heads. Olga was a naked forest, filled with the scent of burned woods, filled with sleeping leaves, full of matured frosts. She was breathing slowly, and a very quiet bird was housed between her lips. I had heard the sound. I had heard and woke up. I wasn't scared, I was restless and like a cat on hot bricks. Everything that was bold and swell a few hours ago now was pale and shrunken. The crystals slicking with my body sweat were slipping out. Olga's body was no longer hot. The house had lost its acceleration. The morning wasn't coming soon enough so that I could get rid of the stock and still night. The woods were squeaking, just as though somebody was stepping on them. A shadow loomed over the bed. Perhaps it was a crystal-inspired imaginary thing, but the shadow had an awe with it, had flesh and bones within. It was a body that was standing further next to the entrance. I got up. It was a ghost whose face seemed to be veiled with a big spider web. The shadow backed off from the bed. The spider web collapsed. The old man was more real than the imagination. His breath had a murmuring sound. He spoke, but it sounded strange to me. He was speaking and I couldn't understand anything. I wanted to wake up. Olga and I was afraid that in a sudden moment I lose both. The old man wasn't scary. The rhythm of his sentences sounded as if he wanted to make me understand something I couldn't crack, something that I must crack. Only a couple of his words here and there appeared familiar. He was speaking Dutch. "I don't understand," I told him in English. The old man continued his talk. I repeated the "did not understand" Dutch verb a few times. The old man finally stopped. He looked at me profoundly, like a sea that pulls down the body down to show something at the bottom. I feared being drowned. The old man wasn't finishing his look. I lay down next to Olga. Her body was soaked. The widespread frost had created a small pond. I turned to the side. I put my hand on her breast gently. I wanted her to wake up and talk. A talk that I would understand. I caught sight of the shadow of the old man on the wall, which was getting farther away. The door didn't make a sound, but the old man had gone. His shadow wasn't there. The murmuring sound of his breath too. Perhaps he had taken his look with him too. Roel took out his cigarette, lightened it, but didn't smoke. He was staring at the sea. Maybe Annie is among these waves, I whispered. His stare was stretched toward me. I read the question in his stare. It's an old Iranian fable, I said, about a girl who was lost in sea. Her friends and family are waiting for her on the seashore every day and night. Their long wait then turns into a song. They would stand by the sea for years and sang. Well, Roel said. Maybe they still sing, I replied. He was smart enough to get his answer. He puffed at his cigarette. The cigarette smoke hooked up with the seashore's damp wind and left in search of Annie. I know the secret, the location of Annie, the old man said. My face was bewildered. Every photo is a secret that needs to be stripped. My eyes were burning from excitement. The photos will be appearing when you read a poem in my language. I stuttered. Read in my language. Every letter became a spark. Every word became fire. The room's darkness was burning. The room was a cave which had become a volcano that would melt the sky. It was an asleep pond, a 1,000-piece pond, full of thick sludge, of tiny hidden frogs. It was beautiful though, as much beautiful as the time when Annie was around. When she did have smile, when she hadn't been turned into a pond under a hideous tree, time-worn, worthless. The fruitless and old sun was spinning on her body, but she wasn't getting warm. She'd no longer get warm. She was a pond, ice cold, a playground for pests, locusts, spiders. Her hair had stripped off the smell of the sea, as if 100 years old, a still beautiful 100 years old, an exhausted beauty wasted. Roel and I, lost and confused, were caught in an inevitable dizziness. We were whirling around ourselves, or maybe around Annie, or perhaps around a sterile tree. Annie's body had no real reflection. It wasn't smooth, it wasn't transparent. We couldn't recognize ourselves in that purgatorial pond. Our image was in 1,000 pieces, all fractured. A flick was enough to crumble both of us, like a mountain of ashes, lagging behind in the thick of the mass of sludge around us. The smell of mud had started to waft over, as if the tree hasn't washed itself in 1,000 years, as if it had got used to the swamp, as if its roots got to its stench from nameless bugs. I had taken Roel, or had he taken me? We had been intertwined. Annie's image, naked and torn, had glued us together. Were we scared? No clue. Were we helpless? Maybe. Annie's pieces were dancing in my mind, dancing and hugging each other. Eyes and eyebrows, hair and head, fingers and hand, thighs and legs, breasts and belly. A pregnant belly, virile and fertile. Annie was dancing naked before me. Light, light and free. We were sitting, empty and worn out. The car was driving away with the bewilderment of our faces. Broken face of Roel, torn face of mine. But our inside was full. Full of the mystifying sound of water. Full of the chilling efforts of wind. The beach was a junk stock. Waves would set themselves free on the land. They wished to do something but were withering on the spot. Both our faces were hopeless, bitter. Bitter and fractured. Even a drop of seawater wouldn't fall from our eyes. Perhaps a hurricane should have begun. A hurricane that would tear us and carry us. From out of the car a sound was approaching, terrifying and obscure, but surely tempting. A hole should be opened. A hole on our faces, or from outside. Was the sea bursting? We didn't know.